Welcome to the D6 Family Ministry Podcast, a place where ideas, principles, and personalities come together to give you a ministry advantage that empowers the church and home.
I don't know anything more important in our society or in the kingdom of God than to help the church, help the family.
Discipleship is not an event, it's a way of life.
And one day it just hit me that discipleship at home was not about doing more. It was about inviting Christ into what we were already doing.
The goal of family ministry is not families sitting on the couch holding hands and singing Kumbaya. The ultimate goal is families that love God, love people, and make disciples of all peoples.
So that's why you're here. You're here to say 1 hour a week, as significant and as awesome as it is, we know that it's not enough, and we want to be intentional with every hour.
You're listening to the D6 Podcast. Here are your hosts, Marianne Howard, Ron Hunter, and Josh Wooten.
Hey, Marianne, here's my question today. You know, when we go on long trips, whether or not it's off to college for the first time, off to basic training in the military, off for a gap year, off for a long overseas mission trip, whatever it is, how much time do you need to prep when you know you're going to be gone for 4 to 6 months?
I need a lot of time. If I'm going to be gone for months, I need a lot of time to plan clothing, wear, financial. Oh, there's so many things that go into being gone that long. That's such a great question. It requires preparation to travel like that.
It does. There's a huge difference in my wife and I. If we're going on a trip, my wife wants me to bring out her suitcase about 2 weeks before we leave. And it gets opened up and laid at the foot of the bed up against the wall. And I'll just watch things pile up inside that suitcase over a week to 10 days. And then finally the night before, she packs it all, or I help her pack it all. But she puts time and energy into it. And then she laughs at me because I'm going on the same trip and I'm probably going to pull out my suitcase the night before. Now, I will think about the laundry, make sure everything's clean and ready to pack, but I am probably not going to start thinking about packing until 6 p.m. the night before I fly, sometimes 9 p.m. After my wife's gone to bed, she's sound asleep. About 10 o'clock, I'll pull the suitcase out, pack up, so she doesn't have to see me pack whenever I'm leaving to go off on trips on my own.
Is that how you plan to go on a cruise? Cruises require multiple outfits, Ron.
No, they don't. Not for men. Not for men.
My goodness.
It's pretty
Poor Pam.
I know. She's stuck with me. But the flip side is true. Whenever I'm traveling overseas for like 12 days, that one takes me a little longer because you're right. There's more energy goes into it. More things about things you can't take, more battery prep, downloading, files onto my tablet for the plane ride. I mean, there's so many different things I got to prep for on this that it's just so different. But our guest today is going to be talking about a similar trip or transition. And that is when we take our kiddos off to college. And Pam and I, my wife and I, we've done this twice with both of our kids. Number one, that's an emotionally gut-wrenching time. But on a practical level, it is a huge transition emotionally, physically, and relationally for our kiddos. For the first time, they don't have the support network of home. And while they can't wait to not have it, if they truly admit it to most people, there's so many unknowns that scare the ever-living daylights out of them. What was it like when you left home? What were you thinking? And what was the thing you're most going to miss? Let me ask that question.
Oh, gosh, that's a good question. And it's heavy. My answer is heavy. I was in a season of I want to do it my way. And so I was kind of, I want to get out of here as soon as possible and have my quote unquote freedom. And so I think I didn't really care about the planning and what I just wanted out. And so whatever that meant, regardless of the trajectory or the consequences of the angst to get out, it's crazy how, when you're removed by 20 years, how that, you look back on that and go, wow, okay, lots of growth since then to now.
Yeah.
I was excited to get out. I failed miserably and stumbled a lot when I left home, to be honest. But they definitely play a part in the woman that I am today. You want to talk about rock bottom and dependence on Jesus. Those moments were strategically important to the woman that I am today, for sure.
Yeah. So what do you think your parents did prepping you? As I look back, I know what my parents did. They're like, okay, I'm gonna make sure you have a little bit of money. You're not, and back then, again, we talked about pagers in a previous episode. Back then, my parents sent me away to college with a calling card. There was preloaded amount of information that I could make long distance by using that card, because that was the only way we could do it. But there are various things we want to prep our kiddos for when we leave. And our guest today is going to introduce one that is the most overlooked area that we prep our kids for. And if you don't catch that out of this he has a lot of great insight. His heart is about, you can tell this guy's a logistical thinker. And this interview was conducted at our D6 conference. There's a lot of noise in the background. A lot of distractions are going on. But I want you to just tune into his heart in these practical ways that his heart is for college students who are for the first time out on their own, away from mom and dad, and not sure how to handle the real world. And some of the everyday decisions mom and dad take for granted now, kiddos are having to do for the very first time. And it's big to them where it's routine to you and I.
Right.
I'll tell you what, I want you to just think through and try to grab 3 ideas that your church can do, and that you, if you have kids coming up through your home, heading off to college, catch this. He's going to say in there, the time to start prepping is early, not 2 weeks before, not even 2 months before. We've got to start early, even though God can redeem that time if we have not. So when we come back from our break, Jim Musser is going to give us insights on prepping our kiddos for heading off to college or leaving the home.
Splink is a simple way to help families in your church link together spiritually. It comes as a free weekly email with ideas that parents can use to have fun, make memories, and talk with their kids. Those teachable moments give moms and dads opportunity to share spiritual truths and life lessons. And no matter how busy life is, there's always time to Splink. Share d6family.com with the parents in your ministry so they can sign up today to start receiving free weekly Splink.
We are live from the D6 conference in Orlando, Florida. I am here with Mr. Jim Musser. Jim has been a campus pastor since 1983. He has earned degrees in social work, Christian ministry, and counseling psychology. He and his wife, Mariana, live in Boone, North Carolina, and I'm so thrilled to get to have this conversation with you today, Jim. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
As parents are preparing for their students to graduate, many may be concerned as to what's going to happen to their students spiritually once they leave their home. In fact, research is a little scary about the numbers of students leaving the church after. Do you have any of that research for us? Any numbers to share with us?
Well, there are a number of studies, but they really fall within a range of 50 to 75% of church-raised kids that are leaving the faith upon graduation from high school.
Isn't that real? And is there like a window? Is that within the 4 years of college, or like when are they making that decision?
I would say it's pretty much when they arrive on campus.
Why do you think that is?
Well, part of it is that they aren't connected before they go with other students or a ministry. There's a lot of times there's no prep work done. I call it the Hail Mary approach. It's like I get calls from parents or emails saying, please contact my child. They're on campus already. And so that just doesn't work very often, because particularly students now, they aren't going to take calls from strangers.
Sure.
Or emails.
Yeah.
That's just creepy to them. So it's that I say this often, the most important thing to a college freshman's life when they first walk onto campus, who are going to be my friends? And if they don't already have connections, they know some people, their friends are going to be their roommate or the person across the hall or down the hallway or maybe in a class, but it's just whoever they fall in with.
So are you saying that there needs to be some homework done on the spiritual front before heading to college?
Oh, yeah.
What does that look like?
Well, I would say by the time that your child gets to be a junior and they're starting to look at, they kind of know what maybe they want to major in, they're looking at schools, part of that search should be what are the spiritual resources on that campus and in that community, because most of the time parents are focused on scholarships, housing, academic kind of things, and they just wait until the last minute to think about spiritual things. Like during summer orientation, our ministry will combine with other campus ministries and have a table for spiritual resources. We rarely have a student come. It's all parents, and they're stuffing their bags full of this stuff. And it's like, okay, they're gonna take that home and they're gonna put it in that kid's bedroom, and that kid's probably never even gonna look at it. Because mom and dad are doing everything, and it's like, okay, this is not going to work very well.
And if a student is more apt to do that, then they're more apt to be that 50 to 25% that are going to stick with the faith.
Right.
Is that correct?
And so I think, it's the connecting. So it's like if you can introduce them to what the spiritual resources are and the places that they're going. Usually there's kind of a two-prong approach to college. One, you do your research online. Then you go visit, and you might visit several different schools. So what I would recommend is when you're visiting, before you go, is find out, is there a campus ministry that I'd be really interested in, as a parent or my student. It'd be better if the student were doing it because they have more ownership. But find out what the resources are, or if there's a church, and then when you arrange for a meeting. Like if a parent calls me, which happens sometimes, and says, we're going to be in town looking at the school, can we meet with you? I will do that gladly, and I'll probably bring one or two students along because that's who the incoming student is going to want to meet. They're going to want to meet an old guy like me. And so that helps. And we've had that happen where we'll have lunch, invite a couple student leaders, and then they get connected, and then there's continual communication, particularly if they're going to come to the school. And so then in orientation, then you just kind of repeat that. Let's follow up with that. Let's talk to those people again, and and
you've already made contact.
And then so when they walk on campus, then and mom and dad pull out of the dorm parking lot, they aren't alone. They already know some people, and we usually encourage our students, our upperclassmen, okay, reach out to these students when they get there. And so that first week, here's what CCF, that's our Campus Christian Fellowship, here's what we're doing this week. We'd love to have you be involved. And just inform them.
How, as parents, can we prepare our kids for that transition into college?
Well, it really starts when they're like 1, 2 years old.
Right.
I mean, most of the approaches that I've read is like kind of trying to come in and do an intervention when they're teens, and it can work, but it's a little late too. It's like if mom and dad are pouring in to their kids spiritually from the get-go, then they're going to be much more prepared by the time they're making decisions about college.
Yeah, that's true.
And the best way is just that mom and dad live out the life of following Jesus.
Yeah.
and
right.
show their kids what that looks like. Because it's the parents that the kids look to naturally. I mean, God created us that way. We look at our moms, we look at our dads. I grew up with I grew up with religious parents, and my mom particularly wanted me and my brothers to go to church. So we went to church. We went to a United Methodist church. I was confirmed. But you know what? That didn't matter much. I went through the process, but what I was watching was mom and dad. And mom and dad didn't pray together. They didn't ever read the scriptures. They fought a lot. My mom gossiped a lot. And it's like, that's what I came away with. That's what being a Christian is. Until I went to college in that freshman year, and I saw students, peers, loving each other and just praying together, reading scriptures together. And I just thought, wow, I never saw that in my church or my home. And it drew me in. It drew me in. And so that's, but that's it just does not work well. And this may be contrary to some of what people think here, but it does not work well if the church is the primary discipler of kids.
Right.
They need to be, in my mind, I believe that the scriptures teach that it's the parents who are supposed to be doing that. The church can help, but you don't find any command that the church as a body is supposed to disciple the kids. It's like it's the parents that are supposed to do that. And of course, that's an ideal world, and we don't live in an ideal world, but that's what we should be aiming for and training up our parents as adults to do the discipling.
Jim, I have 4 boys. And while they're young and college seems a long way off, I know it's really not. So how can I, as a parent, begin equipping my kids for that transition to college or post-high school education or a job, whatever they might walk into after that?
Well, I think, and I'm glad to hear it, I've been in a couple of breakout sessions and I've heard this, is that of building a resilient faith, letting kids get out there and try things and fail and not rescue them. And boys in particular, you have 4 boys. I mean, we live in a culture that's not investing in boys very much. It's like, well, boys just have naturally a leg up, so let's focus on the girls. And we see that on the campus. I mean, the boys, the young men, a lot of them just don't have any motivation. They just want to sit and do video games, and they don't want to lead. It's all the women that are stepping up to lead. The guys are just kind of hanging back. And so they need to be really encouraged to be out there and be boys and be young men. And again, as I said earlier, for you as a mom and their dad to really exemplify what it looks like to follow Jesus and take them along. It's like when you're going out, like we've had students in the past whose parents have been with us and taken their younger kids with us on mission trips and things like that. And that one family went with us one time. They were friends of mine. They had 2 kids. I think at the time they were like 10 and 8. And they went once with us to do some hurricane help, post-hurricane help. And then every year over spring break, they took their kids and worked with a group. And those kids just grew up with that. And so, they see mom and dad doing these things, and they see mom and dad loving each other and praying together and reading the scriptures together. It's not just doing it with them. They're watching. You as a mother, how much kids pick up that you're not even knowing they are. The proverbial slip of the tongue, because they heard mom or dad say something and they think that's great. And they're watching, they're absorbing, and mom and dad need to really just be naturally living out following Jesus. And that will speak volumes to them without, having to do specific things, but you just you follow Jesus and you take them with you. Like if you're going to serve somebody, like take a meal or mow grass or whatever, they go in and they help out, and they just see you guys, mom and dad, living out. Now it's not a guarantee. We live in a fallen world and they have rebellious hearts, and there's many examples in Scripture that where kids have gone astray, but you do have a foundation that is laid that they can come back to later if they do stray.
Yeah.
So
now you said earlier that Scripture's clear that the primary source of discipleship should come from the home. But also the church plays a role in this.
Yes.
And the church plays a role in preparing these students to launch and preparing the parents to prepare these students to launch. So what is that role that the church should play?
Well, in my mind, what the church should be focused on is discipling the adults. And I wouldn't make it too sweeping of a statement, but I don't think discipleship of adults is very strong in most churches.
I agree.
It's mainly preaching, and then we have maybe Sunday. Some churches have Sunday school. A lot of churches have moved away from Sunday school, and then there's the programs for the kids, but there's not. It's like the parents, and I think we heard this today. The parents aren't comfortable. Probably a majority of them aren't comfortable with spiritually leading their kids. They just don't feel equipped. Well, that's what the Scriptures tell. Paul says in Ephesians 4 that we are to equip the saints for works of service. Well, one work of service, obviously, for adults that have kids, is to pour into their kids.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to go more to focusing on, rather than providing all these programs that will attract families to come to us, it's like, let's focus on the adults so that they can disciple their kids, and we can begin to create a whole new generation of kids who, when they reach 18, they are ready to be ambassadors in their worlds, whether they go to work, trade school, or they come to the university campus. Right now what we're doing is basically we're trying to help them figure out what they believe and what it really means to follow Jesus. They may have said, well, I prayed a prayer when I was 8 or 9, but they haven't grown beyond that. As I was talking to one colleague today, he said, they're spiritual infants. They've been in church all their lives, but they're spiritual infants.
Right.
And we find that time and time and time again. And it's like, that model, I think, they're great programs, and I know that the intentions are really good, but this is where I talk about views from downstream. When you look at a river and it's polluted down here, then there's something going on up there that's wrong.
Yeah.
And that's what I see. I'm not in the local church. I'm involved, but I'm not a part of all that. But what I see is kids that are coming out of local churches, and there's something not right about what's going on because they're not ready to share their faith. They aren't comfortable with praying. They don't know their scriptures at all, and maybe a few stories, but they aren't competent to read the scriptures. And I'm thinking, if you've been in a community, a church community, for 18 years of your life, one would think that you would know. I compare it to education. Like if you have a school system that at age 18, 50 to 75% of the graduates don't know how to read, there would be alarm bells going off and people would be protesting, and they'd be saying, something's got to change, it's got to change now.
Right.
And what I don't hear that from the church. It's like, well, those are statistics, but well, what do you do?
Yeah. Okay, so what do you say, though, to the parent who says, well, my kid's about to graduate and we haven't even started, or, like it's just a couple of years away. How do I get them there? I know that part of your testimony that you alluded to earlier is that you came to Christ in college. Yeah. How can that be hopeful to parents? How can you offer them some hope right now?
Well, God is such a big God, and all things are possible with Him. And so you take somebody like myself who really had I was in a church, but it was just a religious thing. And then God, my RA was a Christian. Some of the desk people were Christians to work the residence hall desk. And I just started one of my best friends from a different town invited me to a Bible study. And so God was at work in that. And I think if you're really at the point, say it's April and your student is leaving in August, you're going, oh my goodness, pray.
Yeah.
And do the best you can, but pray, because God is able to make those things happen and open doors that you would never know about. And particularly, if you're right now, you can still be researching what are the spiritual resources and start plugging them in and finding ministries where the Bible is viewed as authoritative for life. Not all ministries are equal, and you have to be wise about that. And not all churches are equal. And so you have to look for a community that has what we would consider a proper view of the Scriptures and the authority of Scripture, a community that's loving, that's what it really is about. Jesus said, they'll know you are my, disciples by the love you have for one another, that there's that love in there. That's what I found. That's what attracted me. And so, when students invite other students, if there's not love there, if they're just cliques, they're going to move on.
Yeah.
And then finally, that it's an equipping ministry. It's like they're letting students take ownership. It's not, the campus pastor is the one, the staff, they're the one doing everything. We tell our students, you are the campus ministers on this campus, not us, because we can't go where you go. We can't walk into the classroom and sit down and have conversations. We can't go into the dorm. If we did, we'd creep people out, and so, but you're right there.
Yeah.
And you have all these opportunities. And that's what I want for our students coming on the campus, because the campus is lost. That's the thing. It's like we don't need to be frightened of it, because we live in a lost world no matter what. Always has been that way. But if there are believers who are mature enough and confident enough in what they know and believe, they can make such a tremendous difference. And because they aren't going to, a lot of these students are not going to come to a campus ministry. They're not going to come to a church. It's just like in a regular community. And this is what we're really teaching. When you go out, when you graduate, you go out into a community, it's not the pastor who's going to reach the community. And most people now won't want to come with you to church anyway.
Right.
And so how do we reach people? Well, you're out there. You're out there working next to them. You're in their neighborhoods, all of that. If you learn how to be an ambassador where you are, then that's fulfilling the Great Commission as you go. I love that.
Yeah.
Because that's our accurate.
And that's what we're about here at D6, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for sharing hope with parents today and just some insight. And I hope that they are encouraged by what you had to say today and feel a little more equipped going into this next season as they are equipping their students to walk into their next seasons of life. So thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Are you looking for a way to equip families to do discipleship in their own homes? D6 Everyday offers a new at-home bundle option, so you can reach families where they are. The same great D6 Everyday resources now bundled to fit your family. D6 Everyday at-home bundles are a great way to promote discipleship at home, especially during COVID-19 restrictions. Many churches and small groups are not gathering for worship or discipleship training, but you can resource them with teaching helps for the parents and devotion magazines for every member of the family, or about the cost of a Chick-fil-A meal. For more information, visit d6everyday.com.
Wow, when he really pinpointed the 50 to 75% leaving the faith, which always staggers us. We're familiar with that number and we spend a lot of time talking through it. I think one of the things that jarred me that I appreciate that he said is the Hail Mary approach to collegiate community, in that parents, sometimes we can get so zoned in on the academic, let's get them in, get the scholarships, and we get so zoned in on the academic element that we totally and then they get to college and they're plugged in academically. They've got their books, they've got their dorm, they've got their food card, they may even have like a season pass to the football games. I don't know. But what happens a lot of times is we forget about the spiritual community and identifying spiritual resources at that college. And I was so blessed that he brought out those points for me as a mom.
Totally agree. In fact, if you want to go back, as listeners, go back in our archives to our first probably 100 episodes. Can't believe we're getting close to 300, but at least in those first 75 or so episodes, in our opening montage, we have a quote from David Platt. And I wish you'd go back and hear it in his voice, because, David's got a unique voice, and it's just Mount Sinai insight, And he says, moms, dads, do not believe that your goal is for your kids to grow up and have a great career. It is not to grow up and earn a scholarship. It is not to grow up and play professional ball. It is not to grow up and buy the big house. It is to serve Jesus Christ. Right. And if we go off thinking about all of those big things Marianne just talked about, summarizing what Jim Musser has said to us, we're going to miss the key component. And we're going to spend the rest of our lives wishing we had done a few things different. Not that it's totally on us, not that it's totally our fault, but we have a good role in prepping our kids by example to go, hey, church is a big component of our life here. When we take you off to college, we want to make sure we find a church. So it might be going and visiting several churches while you're on that trip and staying over and going to a service with your kiddos. And if you're in close enough drive distance, consider driving back there for the first 3 or 4 Sundays to go with them and get that pattern established and help them with it. Otherwise, they're likely just to sleep right on in on every Sunday morning, like most college students will do.
Yes.
And it will drop by the wayside.
I love when he transitioned and really honed in on the value of discipleship in the home and the role of parents. He really spoke our language about connecting the church in the home, and how parents, they're not always comfortable, or they don't always feel equipped to invest spiritually and have spiritual conversations. And I just want to encourage ministry leaders out there. If you are seeing a gap in that, D6 curriculum, D6 everyday curriculum, and D6 at-home bundles is an incredible way for you to get spiritual conversations and spiritual connection directly into the home.
That's right. So let's tell you what a D6 at-home bundle is first, and then we can tell you about the curriculum. But basically, your bundle is where you order a bundle of devotional magazines, meaning one for each age in your family. So if you're a family of 4, you're going to get one for mom, you're going to get one for dad, you're going to get one for your son or daughter, and one for your other son or daughter. Maybe you're a single mom or a single dad, and you have 3 kiddos or 4 kiddos. You just pick one for each of their age groups, and you order it, and it will come in the mail. And let me tell you an insight that Mike Trimble, our board chairman, started using, and we're promoting this. And yes, it is. Mom, dad, if you want to make it feel really special, have it addressed to the youngest child. So it's made out to their name, your address, and let them open it and pass out the devotions when they come once every 3 months. And when they hand them out, they're going to be so excited. They're going to be all in, which is also going to make you accountable, mom or dad, to jump in and read. And all you're going to do is read the devotion every single day. And at various times, you're just going to ask about them. There's going to be these built-in questions in the sidebar, built-in questions where you can say, hey, ask your child about this. Or you can say, hey, I was reading this. What were you reading on the car ride or at dinner or wherever else it's happening? And included in that at-home bundle will be a teacher's digital book. And you can pick that based upon the age of maybe right in between your 2 youngest kids. And you can look at that PDF on your phone or on your tablet or on your computer, and you can just pick out little nuggets. You don't need to teach a formal lesson. just reference that material throughout the week, or maybe you do sit down one time and say, hey, let me go over this, and you have a fun time together with these unpacking teachable moments. That's the at-home bundle, and they are brilliant, and they're selling so well based upon the pandemic. These are the new habits of moms and dads being intentional. We're having to do it in school. We're having to do it in so many other places. Why not tackle the one that matters the most that Jim's remind us about? What about the D6 Everyday Curriculum, Marianne? What's the value?
D6 Everyday Curriculum is a game changer for churches. If you're looking to get every age on the same page, and walk kind of as a family ministry minded church, that is definitely the curriculum for you. It has just been a game changer and can I just say too, Ron, one of the things I love about D6 Everyday Curriculum is the car rides home.
Yes.
And going to the restaurant after church. I have teenagers, and what I'm learning about is the same thing that my teenagers learning about. And so we're able to have just remarkable spiritual conversations. And so you're linking my heart, and you're making those conversations so much easier for me to have, so that it's not so left field and we're not able to apply. I mean, they're at home with me all week after Sunday. Yeah. And so they're living their life at their school and in the car and treating each other certain ways in our game room, and whatever, interacting over cleaning the dishes. And what that does is it leverages spiritual moments, and we're able to have conversations based on the truth principle from church. Yeah. We're all holding each other accountable in the way that we're living. That's what I love about D6 Everyday Curriculum.
Absolutely. So these are the habits we want to have in our lives. And maybe your kiddos are grown. It's not wrong to begin to challenge them, say, hey, would you like to do this with me long distance? And you do it from a distance. You do it with your grandson or your granddaughter. Go ahead and work through those areas. These are the moments that really matter as we move forward. And by the way, you were talking about the sitting down at the restaurant or the dinner table. Boy, next week's guest is going to talk through some dinner table and digital habits as it relates to what we do at the dinner table, what we do in our homes. But Arlene Pellicane is going to be challenging us about all things digital, things digital. And, her approach to this, I've heard a number of speakers deliver this type of message. Hers is by far the most creative and memorable. And I wish I had her knowledge when we started as parents. That's what I'm going to say.
Absolutely.
Because there's some things I did wrong, some things that, my wife and I would like to go back and do a little bit differently. And we're challenging our kiddos who, they're starting out as new moms and dads to think about these kinds of items early on.
That's right.
So next week, Arlene Pellicane. And until then, we're going to be praying for you that you engage, and those who are around you be intentional about discipleship opportunities among all generations, each and every day of our lives. We'll see you next week.
You've been listening to the D6 Podcast. You can learn more about D6 at d6family.com.